I always like to organically start the conversation anyway. Whatever. Oh, look at that. So, Peter Johnson, it's a pleasure to meet you. Yeah, so this meeting is happening because a friend of mine said, will you take Peter Johnson and talk to him? I'm like, fine. I haven't done any political pieces. I was explaining before we actually turned on camera that I don't have a dog in the fight because I don't live in Palm Coast. I live in Ormond. So for me, I feel like I'm in a decent position to be objective. And I don't mind having anybody on the channel to talk about their specific viewpoints. So cool. Just to make that abundantly apparent, even if I did endorse anybody, it's irrelevant because I don't live here. So
yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity for having you here to have an open discussion with us. This is awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, well, huge thanks to Mike here at Good Vibes. I love to talk to people here at Good Vibes.
The drinks are delicious.
Yeah,
fantastic.
I'm having some delicious 0-calorie water right now.
It's the healthy option.
I mean, it is, but that's
healthy too.
What did you have?
This is the...
Looks like coffee.
Yeah, it is. It's the coffee. Mike, which one was this?
That is the caramel macchiato.
Caramel macchiato. It is absolutely delicious. Light.
Yeah.
Absolutely flavorful too. Really good drink.
See, now you... Go ahead.
Is it under 200 calories?
Under 200 calories.
Not 1,000 calories?
Not 1,000 calories. No, it doesn't taste like 1,000 calories. It tastes good. Yeah.
We always eat protein.
Oh, there's protein in there.
Right.
Nice. See, now you have a problem, though, because once you get introduced to Good Vibes, you come back.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I will be back.
I apologize. I did the same to Jeremy. I think you've talked to Jeremy Davis.
Under Jeremy.
Yeah, so he had never been in here, and he's from this area.
Yeah.
And how long has it been? Like 4 or 5 months, maybe? And he comes here more than I do, I feel like. And, but Jeremy's a good friend of mine.
Yeah, Jeremy's great people.
Yeah, I hang out at his shop pretty regularly. My kid, he goes to school around here. And living in Ormond, like a lot of times I'm here, and I don't want to go all the way back to Ormond just to come back. So I find different places to hang out, like Good Vibes and Jeremy's shop.
Yeah, this is an awesome location. Appreciate the hospitality.
Absolutely, man. I love this place.
Yeah.
What's kind of interesting about it, too, is it's so centered around not just nutrition, but I always tell people that it's a hub for networking. And just being able to have talks like this. Like, I did another one not too long ago. It was the same setup, actually, on this couch. And it was just a really easy environment to just talk and whatnot. So tell me a little bit about yourself. I already insulted you. I said that you look like Nicolas Cage from Con Air.
Hey, I don't take it as an insult. I'll take that as a compliment.
I mean, it's easy to remember, though. Yeah. Like, who are you voting for? Nicolas Cage!
Dude, as I was telling you before, I get it quite frequently. I do see the comparison. It's
cool. It's cool.
I appreciate it.
Like, it's there.
Some people question long hair. I mean, that's me. That's like that's my personality, I guess you could say. I mean, I don't think hair makes the man, but it also does get me a lot of comparisons with Nicolas Cage. So it has its benefits too.
So tell me a little bit about yourself though. Like, you've been here for 15 years, is that right?
Yeah. So I became a full-time resident of Palm Coast in 2010. As I was telling you a little bit briefly before, I was born in New Jersey. My family's been here since the mid 80s. In fact, there's a funny story. They were some of the first people in their section, the B section, to buy lots in ITT days. And when they showed up, there was just a forest. And they were like, "Where's our lot?" And the person was like, "In there, about a half mile down."
Figure it out
in there. So I was born in '93, so I've been coming to Palm Coast since I was a child. My parents got divorced. I had the opportunity to either go to Sacramento, where my father lives, or come to Palm Coast. My mom obviously had family here. Sacramento is just not my vibe. It's a little bit too city for me.
Okay.
I personally, I found myself at the time, and I say it hesitantly because at the time I didn't realize how much more I would fall in love with the area. But I've always had a passion for fishing, for hunting, being outdoors, being outside. And this area really enhanced all that for me. So it was a cool opportunity. And I love the area. And I've been here. And that's why I haven't left, is I truly enjoy this area.
I love it. That's cool. what's interesting is I have never been hunting.
Never been hunting?
I was in law enforcement for 12 years.
So you're familiar with firearms?
I am. Shot rifles and stuff. I actually carried a Rock River rifle, AR-15 in my car.
223, while not the same platform for a hunting. Well, the caliber is the same platform for a lot of hunting rifles, but the model of the gun isn't. So instead of an AR, we're more tactical looking weapon. It's same caliber though.
You just use like a single round at a time, kind of.
So there's different regulations with different types of hunting. You're not allowed to have more than a 5-round magazine for hunting. So it's typically a bolt action rifle, some sort of semi-automatics, but it's not a full 30-round magazine or some sort of that capacity. But the 223, especially in Florida, since the deer are a little bit smaller and we have a good pig population, the 223 is actually an amazing caliber to use.
Oh, it is?
Here. Yeah.
Yeah, we only use 223 in that rifle system instead of 5.56. I think it was just cheaper.
Yeah, and interchangeable. 5.56, 223.
Is it more controllable though? Yeah, less powder.
I gotta be honest with you. I'm not a techie, like kind of nerdy gun guy. I go more off a result. So like you hear people say like, oh, you gotta shoot this powder, you gotta shoot this powder. I'm concerned about making an ethical kill and you want
doing
it efficiently.
Yeah, you want it
and being productive.
And you don't like I've heard before you want that animal to die quickly so it doesn't release any toxins.
Sort of. With deer, it's not as big of an issue. It's more just an ethical perspective. With pigs, though, specifically male pigs, if you shoot them and they don't go down pretty much instantaneously, they have up all that built-up testosterone. So when they're struggling on the ground for like a few seconds, if you have to put a second shot into them, they're releasing all that. And as soon as you cut open that meat, it is just the most rank smell you'll ever entail. Yeah, and the bigger issue, though, with the hunting calibers and why 223 is actually a good round, not to make this into a hunting podcast, but over penetration. So something you probably are familiar with from law enforcement. You don't want to shoot through someone and then shoot behind them. It's not concerned about your backstop per se in hunting, but what it is concerned about is if you put a front quarter shot in, the exit wounds of that penetration, and with higher calibers than 223, you can basically blow out the back shoulder of the shot that you place it through and destroy a lot of the meat. And part of taking the animal is obviously harvesting the meat to eat. Right? Yeah. So you don't want to destroy it.
So you like deer. What other things do you like to hunt?
So I've hunted deer, I've hunted ducks, we've drawn tags before for alligator. I have a huge affinity for hunting small game, specifically squirrel. It gets a bad rap. I call it the chicken of the tree.
Right, because it's like greasy and there's a lot of bones. And it's hard to...
They taste... You just have to slow cook them. Yeah, you have to slow cook them. I make wings all the time and quarter them. Ooh. Dude, I promise you, man, my mom was... My family was never into hunting, right? My dad has he was an attorney by trade. He now has a financial background. My mom was a Jersey girl, as she claims. So like there was no real like outdoors. To be completely transparency, but my childhood wasn't tumultuous, but like my parents did argue a lot. So fishing in the outdoors was a way for me to kind of like escape that and like have my own little piece. So I've just found myself attracted to the woods, and I kind of made the joke before, like everyone says like, oh, what's your ulterior motive when it comes to running for mayor? And mine is like, quite frankly, like we're cutting down a lot of land and like we're destroying the wildlife. And like, it just so happens to align with the fact that there's overdevelopment in Palm Coast taking place. So like, I made my ulterior motives pretty clear off the front, but and not to, once again, not to like delve down into this, but like, I do also believe it's hunters and anglers' responsibility as stewards of our community, as stewards of the wildlife resources, to put our best foot forward and show these things in a positive manner. And I promise you, man, I will have you over for some squirrel wings. My mom, the Jersey girl, went from get that out of my house to that smells good to is there any more left? So I'll put you on some good chicken wings.
Okay, so
squirrel wings.
I'll tell you, I am very adventurous with my palate.
Yeah.
So we were in, where were we last? It was a land-based trip. I know that. We like to cruise. We love to cruise, me and my wife. Awesome. But the last trip was freaking Curacao.
Oh, cool.
In Curacao, some people hunt lizards. We rode up on some guys. They had like, I thought it was a shotgun at first, and they were standing in the middle of the road. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, Kristen, they have guns. And she was looking down at the time. She's like, what? I'm like, oh, no, those are just pellet guns. Yeah. Okay, it's fine. But they were shooting the pellet guns at the iguana in the trees.
Similarly here in Florida, and while we don't have the issue, South Florida actually has a massive iguana population.
Yeah.
And they're invasive. They're non-natives. there's debate as to how they were introduced, but the bottom line is it's either escaped pets or released by irresponsible pet owners.
Okay.
And they actually give tours now with air guns, and you can eat the meat off the iguanas.
Yeah.
Quite crazy stories. If you actually go into the news, you can see they put out similar to like weather warnings here.
Yeah.
In South Florida, they'll put out iguana freeze warnings because the iguanas are cold-blooded, right? So when it dips down into the lower temperatures in Miami, gets their 3 days of winter down there.
Yeah.
The iguanas freeze up,
Oh, really?
and then they fall out of the tree. So you have
And
like
you just
30
catch
or
them.
40, or you get hit in the head. And some people, no, don't laugh. People have seriously like, there was like one woman who like got seriously injured by an iguana
a
falling
frozen
out of a tree
iguana?
down there. Yeah, and not only
I'm
are they,
sorry, that's not funny.
Yeah, no,
It sounds funny to think that it's like freaking iguana.
they're literally just falling out of the trees. And not only that,
Yeah.
they do a lot of damage to the seawalls down there because they burrow into all those walls.
Oh.
Plus, also the native population issues that they
Yeah.
affect locally. But yeah, it's just so we have a lot of those issues here in Florida.
Really interesting. I never knew about the iguanas in South Florida. Now, you said they hunt them. Do they eat them?
So yeah, a lot of guys do eat them. I've never been hunting for iguanas, but from what I've read, and I don't want to speak tongue in cheek here, there's concerns of the level of mercury in some of those, similar to eating like swordfish or similar to eating too much tuna. So
Yeah.
people do eat them, and in fact,
Just
they actually
sparingly, maybe.
just sparingly, yeah. And what they do is they actually render down the fat, similar to like rendering down bacon or bear fat, and they use it for cooking applications for like cookies and like just all sorts of stuff. It's a very niche thing. Like I personally don't see iguana being the hot new item at the.
Have you tried it?
No, I have not tried it. I've tried some
You have
adventurous
to
things,
try it.
but I have not tried. You know, and I'm game to. I'll try anything once.
I probably have the video somewhere or pictures on my social media when we went to Curacao. I didn't finish the story.
Oh yeah,
They were shooting iguanas in the street. We're like, okay, that's cool. We get out and we like take pictures with them. And we drive off, and then my wife, who's also equally adventurous as I am,
sure.
she's like, we should go back and ask what they're going to do with those iguanas, right?
Yeah.
So we did. We went back and like, hey, are you guys, like restaurateurs, or is that what you're going to have at your restaurant? They're like, no, we're going to eat this ourselves. What happened was that property right there where they were hunting, that person invited them to come control that population of iguana. And so they were just, that wasn't their job. They were just doing that. It was a weekend. Long story short, they invited us over for dinner.
So did you try it?
Oh, yeah.
Was it good?
It was fantastic.
It was fantastic. What is it? Can you compare it to something?
Yes. It is not like chicken. I hate when people say
it's like
everything is like chicken.
because it's not.
No,
Yeah.
it's closer to frog legs.
Okay, that's
It's because
realistic.
because frog legs has a unique texture to it.
It's got like the bouncy kind of. Like,
Correct. It has more muscle to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the texture of chicken is not it. Frog legs is really comparable.
How'd they cook it?
They cooked it two different ways. I know one was like a stew,
Oh, interesting.
and how else did they make it? Both ways were delicious, and they served it to us both ways. We weren't sure if we were going to go to the house and die, but we were like,
Make it back to the cruise ship in time.
Well, we weren't on a
cruise.
cruise. No, but it was fantastic. Here's what I knew though. So a lot of Curacao is impoverished. You can tell.
Yeah.
As a detective, a former detective, you can kind of know when you're going into a bad neighborhood.
Sure.
But we went in, there were nice houses. I'm like, okay, we're gonna live. And then they served us the iguana, and it was delicious.
Good deal, man.
Definitely, you should try it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of shift it into the local issue, talking about invasive animals, one of the things in the news lately has been the feral hog problem in Palm Coast.
Really?
Yeah. So, and this kind of ties in with overdevelopment. And just to give a little background to people who aren't aware, you hear a lot of talk about like, this is their land, this is their land. I totally agree. We shouldn't be cutting down the land. However, pigs are invasive to Florida. They were actually brought here in the 1500s with some of the Spanish settlers originally.
Oh, really?
They thought that they could leave them on an island. They thought that they couldn't swim. Turns out the pigs can swim. They also populate like rabbits.
Okay.
So a lot of the overdevelopment in Palm Coast that is taking place has led to an increased wildlife-human interactions.
Oh, okay, yeah. I can see that.
And what's happening now is obviously you see a lot more roadkill in the area, see all that stuff because you're pushing the animals out. And I agree, it's terrible. But the pig issue is something specifically that can be managed with the assistance of hunters. Yeah. And this is a little bit more than a Palm Coast issue, but Palm Coast can be involved in it and should be involved in it because a lot of the areas are also affected. But Flagler County as a whole has taken a pretty a pretty good approach so far. They're trying to work with some local stakeholders. They're trying to get hunter input. They're trying to do a bunch of different things to implement and work with programs to basically have either trapping programs or hunters come out and remove some of the wildlife. And I think it's awesome because as hunting opportunities diminish, this is like a way for people to not only keep tradition and keep the practice alive, but also to see the benefits and the role that hunters can play in the community and the positive aspects.
I like that a lot. And I've never been hunting. Like
I'll take you hunting too.
Yeah, let's go.
Not
Yeah,
deer season, but yeah.
So hogs, that has a different taste than pigs.
So
because they're running free kind of.
They're all the same, effectively, right?
Yeah,
like at the lineage, right? Like they're all pigs, quote unquote. Screw scraffa.
That's their technical name.
Yeah, that's their Latin
Screw
name.
scraffa. I can't say that.
Yeah, I know. I'm butchering.
I could not say that 3 times fast.
They're all yeah, I can't say it 1 time slow. They all come from the same lineage, right?
Yeah.
So the differences, though, is pigs that are raised in pens are a lot more fatty. You get bacon off of them.
Yeah.
They're fed. Getting a pig real big isn't an issue. When they escape, what happens is they're running around, they're foraging. They're a lot more lean. Like when you cut them, people are like, "Oh, did you get the ribs?" Like you can shine a flashlight through the ribs on the wild pigs. It's not very thick. In fact, what a lot of people do for the males is they capture them, castrate them, keep them alive, and then keep them pen fed to A, get out the testosterone, and then B, also to fatten up the pig and make it a little bit better. But yeah, they're all technically the same. There's like Eurasian boars. There's a few different subcategories, but they're a pig that is in captivity, if it escapes, will become a feral. Like it morphs into becoming a feral pig effectively. And they reproduce at an extensive rate. And now, going back to a little bit of what I was talking about, it's causing property damage in people's yards. They root up the land. They destroy, not only from like a physical like property perspective, they destroy a lot of the ground nesting birds like turkeys, a lot of our native wildlife. And unfortunately, there's no silver bullet. There's like no silver bullet for it. A lot of the top scientists that you hear talk about this and discuss it basically say there has to be a genetic mutation in order to wipe it out. Yeah, because like guys running around with rifles, while helpful, and while any pig that's not on the landscape is a good pig that's not on the landscape. The real way to go about it to implement procedures and to actually put a dent into the population is to do a trapping program where you basically have these big corrals. They come out and put feed. You have remote cameras, game cams set up. You get 30 pigs in that pen and that cage drops on them. And then you go in and take out the pigs. And there's a lot of talk about like, what could you do with them? And unfortunately, the way that the state is set up, and I understand it, right? There's like Food and Health and Drug Administration rules and all sorts of stuff like that. You can't kill the pigs and donate the meat to homeless shelters or anything like that.
You can't.
Well, and I get it because it has to be inspected, and like we have to treat everyone with the utmost respect, especially those people. So
Can they get inspected?
They can. There's only a few facilities in the state. It's like time consuming by the time that you do the cost benefit analysis. The real way to get around it is to basically make a hunting program where people come out and basically accept the pigs on their own, take them to their house, slaughter them, and then have the county go about doing that and running an authorized program where we know who's out there doing it and taking care of it. That's not just a bunch of people running around with firearms in the woods, because that's often the perception that's put in place. It's like it's just a bunch of crazy people running around with guns. When unfortunately that's pretty far from the truth in most cases.
I mean, pretty much every hunter that I know, they're hunting an animal because they're feeding their family. I mean, you can't just get that type of meat at the store. You can't get deer, and you can't get like a wild hog.
Yeah, so it's actually illegal in the United States to sell white-tailed deer based on conservation laws. That's why you can't get that in the store. So it is an opportunity and a source to get, I mean, call it what you want, but it's like non-GMO, all the it's just natural meat. So I like it, and it's a super lean protein source. Tastes good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm known very well as being a cheap person.
Yeah, I am. So, I like to call myself fiscally responsible as well.
So I should start hunting.
Yeah, get into
so that I don't have to buy meat.
Yeah, and on top of that too, one of the best things, and this is where like hunters get a bad rap in a sense, but it's just it's and not to sound crude, but it's like an uneducated public, right?
Yeah.
Every year you have to get a hunting license,
Yeah.
or you have to do what I did. And my wallet's over there. I was going to grab it. You can get a lifetime hunting and fishing license, which is what I have. $1,000 saves you money in the long term. For someone like me who knows that they're going to use it, it makes sense. But that is directly money that is going back into conservation. And a lot of times, while people say like, "Oh, we shouldn't be cutting down land and shouldn't be doing this," or hunters are bad. Hunters are some of the leading contributors to conservation. And I always tell people, even if you disagree with hunting, go buy a hunting license. You just contributed $46 to preservation of land in some aspects. So,
that's cool.
Yeah.
Now you like to fish too.
I do like to fish. I started fishing.
You started with fishing.
Yeah, I started. Most people in order usually go fishing, hunting, and then trapping.
See, I've spent so much time on the animals because I'm hungry right now.
Yeah.
And the audience will kind of gather that because I love deer sausage.
Yeah.
Like deer.
Summer sausages.
Oh, dude. And now we're going to talk about fish, and so I'm going
Yeah.
Since I moved to Florida, I've only been here two and a half years. Right?
Yeah.
My wife is from Flagler. We wanted to get home.
How long has your wife been here, by the way? Sorry.
She grew up in Flagler.
Oh, okay, awesome.
Yeah,
so that was the kind of the home roots to your transition here.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
She wanted to get home, kind of get away from St. Louis.
I understand.
There's a lot going on in St. Louis.
I understand. A lot of major cities are having that problem right now.
But I've been eating a lot of fish since I got here because I want to embrace the Florida man.
Yeah.
The
culture.
The black Florida man.
The black Florida man. Dude, actually, speaking of black Florida man, Crab 386 in Benel, I don't know if you've ever been there. Man, their food is absolutely fantastic. I will say this. I'm allergic to shellfish.
Okay.
We talked about it a little bit before. I'm firefighter paramedic training. So I spell it out for people because when it's situations is bad and you're in a bad spot, it helps to have something. Yeah, exactly. So of all my tattoos, that's like a meaningful one. Yeah. So while I can't eat crab, I have eaten some of the other things on the menu, and those guys have really nailed like the African American cuisine up to like the Southern culture. It is absolutely astonishing food.
That's fantastic. You're gonna have to tell me later so I can actually make a note of it in my phone. Because here's my thing. I try and get everything out of my head and into a note because I don't trust my memory. So tell me later, and I will have to go check.
Revisit.
Yeah. What do you like to fish for?
So, that's a tough question, man. I like to fish for everything. So around here specifically, redfish is like my bread and butter. That's what I grew up on. I spent a lot of time in Long Creek here, which is one of Palm Coast, what I consider jewels. Unfortunately, due to access, like we have a kayak launch there, and you can come from Bing's Landing, but due to access, it's out there. I mean, it's a swamp, and a lot of people are uncomfortable going out there. We have sign markers. There's a lot of great amenities to it, but I spent a lot of my childhood growing up out there. I mean, or what I say, my young adulthood, I guess you could say. I was never a guy. You say cheap, so I just found that funny, and I'm trying to like lay a little bit into my thought process. It never made sense to me to purchase a $40,000 boat to catch a 5-pound redfish. So I've always rocked like a little aluminum tin can boat. Got it for like $300 on Facebook. Put a little motor on it, and that's always it's like allowed me to get back there and get into the shallows. So I grew up fishing for redfish. I love flounder gigging. It's in the flounder gigging.
I've heard of flounder.
Yeah, so what you do is it's basically the hunting of fishing. And it's a little bit, I don't want to say debated or contested, but it's like a perfectly legal activity. The reason it's a little contested is that there's debate as to like recreational versus commercial industry and who is affecting the flounder populations. I personally think it's a combination of both, also water quality issues. It's not just cut and dry that like flounder gigging, but you go around, you use lights at night, shines down into the water, the flounders sit flat, and you cruise around with like a long rod with a spear on the end of it, and you just poke them, and you're allowed to get 5, and it's a pretty efficient way to get flounder, and it's one of the cool things about this area, especially up like Matanzas Inlet, which is obviously not Palm Coast, but just in the area in general, the canals around here. So yeah, redfish, flounder, snook. Yeah, I catch bluefish. I've made like fish dips and stuff. It's not my favorite tasting fish. That's like a northern fish to me. Like it's not northern. I should say like a northern fish, but it's the saltwater fish in Florida have a taste that is. They don't have a taste. They taste like flaky. I mean, you eat snook, you eat flounder. It doesn't taste fishy, and that's kind of what I enjoy. The bluefish, I catch them. They're more of like bycatch for other things that I'm fishing for, but they're a little bit too fishy for me. Not that I don't like them. I just
sure.
But
cool.
yeah, and tarpon. There's all sorts of fish around here. Caught some pretty
Now I
big
have a
tarpon.
problem because now I'm extremely
Now you can't eat tarpon.
well, I'm just hungry in general.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about, like you said, flounder, and I can see it right now, breaded.
Breaded, dude. You got
nice deep fried.
little hot tip for you. Well, hot tip.
You're gonna make it worse.
Yeah, I'll make it worse. You go to I believe Publix has it at Walmart. It's called Autry, Autry. It's don't get the cornmeal one, just get the regular flour breading. And simple, man. Season your fish first, because if you season your breading, you don't get all the seasoning you want on there. So season your fish first. Little you can either do it just plain, or you can do like little paprika, little like lime chilies, little seasoning, batter it right in the oil for 2 minutes, dude, and
I'm gonna just come to your
yeah, there you can. Yeah, we'll do a fish fry.
So you were saying though before that hunting, fishing, that's really what inspired your journey into politics. Does that have to do with fishing too, or is it mostly?
Yeah, so I mean, that's one. I wouldn't say that that's the only thing that's inspired by running the politics. There's obviously overdevelopment issues.
But it was something.
It was definitely and I'll tell you why is I don't want to get the dates wrong. Probably about 5-6 years ago, there was a big push when Lake Okeechobee was discharging. Lake Okeechobee sits in the middle, right? And what happens is it disrupts the natural flow of water south to the Everglades. And what it is sugar fields, and like big sugar is what people say, like cane fields. And they don't want to flood those fields. So they keep all that water locked up in Okeechobee. They discharge it. The Army Corps of Engineers come out and they'll discharge it. And they'll shoot it off to either side of the coast. And when they do that, they run all that water, all the phosphates, all the different nutrients that affect they cause algae blooms effectively. And that really diminishes the oxygen levels for a lot of fish. Fortunately, in this area specifically, we have not been affected by that. But seeing the ramifications and basically seeing a lot of the policies that led to that, it really inspired me to at least start paying attention a little bit more. I mean, I've always paid attention to politics, but I mean specifically on a local level. And this wasn't just 5 years ago. I mean, I've been involved in all of this, but there was a big spur by Captains for Clean Water, and there was a lot of movement, and Governor DeSantis at the time, who eventually ended up catching flack for in the national debates, because they were saying like, oh yeah, Governor DeSantis is frack everywhere and drill everywhere except for Florida. And it was true, because Floridians, while historically, and not to bring big party politics into this, but while historically a red state, they have a strong concept and a strong admiration for the well-being of the area as a whole. And that includes the waterways, you have to think about what Florida attracted, right? Yeah. If you go back in the history, Florida was if you go back to the history of migration from the north, or just settlers, I'm not talking about like Native Americans and like the Spanish and colonization, but it was pitched as the jungle where you could come catch manta rays and see manatees and do all this fishing. And a lot of the big areas, Tarpon, like Tampa and Tarpon Bay and like Boca and all those kind of areas, had a lot of tourism that attracted those people for outdoors. And we never lost that. The whole draw of Florida is we are a boating community effectively, with pretty beaches and beautiful waterways. And interior, we have lovely forests and all sorts of different areas. Yeah. And we can't forget that the reason that people moved to Florida isn't to level these trees and build apartments. It was because they wanted a better quality of life, which isn't necessarily provided by a city council as much as it is by an area as a whole. And we have changed that dynamic, and we're facing the repercussions of that.
Right. Now, you were talking about the water and stuff as it relates to fishing. Kind of tell me what that would do. You said we're not affected.
We aren't affected for it because just geographically where the discharges come out. So like the West Coast and Panhandle usually get affected by it real bad, and then closer down towards like Canaveral's kind of the border down there. But the algae blooms happen, and what that does is it depletes the oxygen. So you're basically choking all the fish. So what happens is you'll see, and you can Google it later or whatever, you'll see videos of South Florida. And I mean, captains will be out there on their boat, and it's just redfish and snook and everything just belly up because they die from that oxygen suffocation.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's tough, right? Because unfortunately, due to big party politics, we have representatives that truly, I believe, in some aspects do care, because they do implement certain things, but they don't take it far enough in protecting it. And I see that same issue in Palm Coast. I think you have council members that care, and I think you have people that care. but they don't do what's necessary, and they bend over for the special interest groups. And Big Sugar and that specific scenario is the special interest group that keeps that problem occurring, because it's a money generator, it's a tax generator, it's an industry. And that's when I talk about striking a balance between natural and growth. That's what I mean, is we can't sell out to the highest bidder.
Yeah.
And we also can't go back and say, look, we can't have any growth at all, because you need that to continue.
Yeah.
But at the pace and the development that we're going, we are experiencing drastic change. And this just, by the way, this isn't just a unique to Palm Coast issue. This is a Florida issue as whole. And a lot of this stems from the COVID days. I mean, we had Governor DeSantis saying that this was the greatest state. And at the time, quite frankly, I felt like it was, and I still feel like it is. But we didn't have mask restrictions. Like, we had a lot of like more freedoms and civil liberties where other places in the country did not.
Yeah.
And because of that, people were tired of what they were dealing with at home. And Florida changed from a retirement community and a boating community to effectively a political safe haven for people that that shared the same views and wanted the same things. And that's great. But in the process, we have incurred things that we were not prepared for to deal with.
Yeah. I can definitely see what you mean by that. Just the influx of people.
Yeah.
And I wasn't ready for that.
We weren't, and we didn't, specifically Palm Coast to speak on, because that's what we're running for, is the infrastructure was lacking. Bringing in people to an area, you have to look at some of the numbers. I'm a real data guy. So the average age of a resident that is coming into Palm Coast right now is 49 years old. Not a spring chicken.
No.
Historically, and I get the trends are changing because they're talking about adjusting Social Security, and they're talking about retirement's just being postponed because things are getting more expensive, so people are working in. But 49 is, in my eyes, near or at retirement age. So we're not bringing in workers to the city. We're bringing in more residents that are planning on retiring. That's great. I don't have an issue with that at all. But we have to be mindful of the fact that these people require services. So you need additional plumbers, you need additional electricians, you need additional retail stores, you need all these additional things that require younger people to come to the area.
Yeah.
And we're not giving people, in my eyes, as a younger person who has fought the battle of like, do I stay in Palm Coast? Do I go in Palm Coast? And obviously I've stayed because I love the area. But it's a real conundrum, because there's not a bunch of high paying jobs here for younger people to come in. And on top of that, even if there aren't high-paying jobs, the cost of housing compared to the $15 or $20 an hour jobs that you find around here, you're spending 50% of your paycheck on average if you make $15. I mean, the average apartment price right now, never mind the fact that people can't buy homes at my age, never mind the fact that people, I mean, and we're slowly coming down from the $80,000 over asking price in the crazy COVID market, but 8% APR still, even though it's dropped a little bit now, 5 to 8% APR. Houses have not dropped in price. They're still way above double. I mean, we talked a little bit about beforehand. My mother bought a house pre-COVID in the C-section. She put $225 into it. On Zillow yesterday, and I've done a ton of work to it. On Zillow yesterday, I looked, it was up for like $512. I mean, that's in a 3-year span. So we haven't tripled the pay of people my age in that time to make up with it. And there's been all sorts of studies recently as to where it goes. So without having the workforce and without having the people to take care of the residents, it's just flat out irresponsible to tell people to come move here when we don't have this. And then the people that move here bought into a lifestyle that they thought they had, and quite frankly are a little disappointed by what they're getting out of it. And I don't blame them. You talk to people that have been here for 40 years and you talk to people that have been here for 4 months, and there's a similar theme. The growth and the overdevelopment is out of control. And I understand the theory of like, you can't be the last one in and say, close the door behind me. But you can manage this in a much more responsible sense, especially since you have council members and the mayor who sit up there and say, all of this growth was planned for. I understand that Palm Coast was projected to have, pick a number, right? 250, 300,000, some estimates say 600,000. There's all sorts of numbers that Palm Coast was projected to have. But they had a master plan. The council continues to rezone. They continue to annex in land from the county. They continue to increase density. They've adjusted the LDC in the prior years. They have made all these steps that were not in the plan. So, yeah, growth was planned for. And historically, we've had 5,000 people on average about a year come into this city, county, however you want to look at it, the area in whole. And we've approved 9,000 homes. And if you go 2-person per home on a super conservative side, that's 18,000 new people in the span of 2 years. We've already exceeded both years by 4,000. So the growth is outpacing what we are able to do. And it's leading to a lot of issues. And that's why we're in the situation we're in now, where the council is asking the residents that have been here, and even the new residents, for increase on their water bills, increase on their utilities. They're putting the cost back on the residents for the growth instead of having a strong business core. And I just want to clarify this too. I personally don't believe that people in Palm Coast have the stomach for an Amazon warehouse facility. I don't think that's the type of industry that people want around
They're
here.
not there yet.
No, we're not. It's not. That's not what people want, and I don't think that's what's right for the area.
No, it wouldn't look right.
It wouldn't look right, and it doesn't mesh.
It doesn't. Like, there are pretty much all one-story buildings here, and Amazon is a large warehouse.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to single out Amazon.
Yeah.
Pick another major distribution facility, and while that brings jobs to the area, I just bounce that back again to what do people really want, and there's an emphasis on local restaurants or places like this, Good Vibes. There's an emphasis on retail. There's an emphasis on ecotourism, recreational tourism. There's all these areas that we could be exploring, but instead what we're pushing is apartments and jobs that aren't here yet.
Okay.
It's tough.
Yeah. I'm going back to that, though. You're saying that we don't have the infrastructure ready for these people that need additional services.
I mean, we just got a second hospital.
Yeah, it's a nice hospital.
Beautiful hospital, but once again, like it's only, and nothing against that hospital, we needed it, but like it's only 60 beds, and while that's great, it misses the bigger picture. You talk to people; they can't get an appointment for their son for 6 months for a pediatrician, or if they can, they have to go to Daytona, or they have to go to Jacksonville, or they have to go to St. Augustine. Talk to the older residents. There's no cardiologist in town. There's no whatever they need in town, right? So the problem is that like when I say that there's not infrastructure, it's not just wide roads. It's the basic healthcare necessities that people need in this area to preserve the quality of life going forward for them.
Yeah, I can give a specific example as it relates to that, because in St. Louis, I could just walk into a Quest and get blood work.
Yeah.
You can't get into a Quest down here without an appointment. At least the one in Palm Coast. Now you can get into the one on Hospital Drive or whatever up there if you come early enough. But here, no, it's just not a thing. So it makes sense, and that's a straightforward example of how that works. But even talking about the labor force to help the elderly for like plumbing and all this stuff, there's a lot of kids that aren't going into those industries.
So a few things on that. One, there's a retention issue here. We have just by the most recent numbers, I think they said there was like 13,000 students in the Flagler County School District. Okay. Granted, they're not all workforce, but that's 13,000 people that are eventually going to become workforce. You're going to lose some of them to universities in other states. People are going to relocate. But we've done an extremely poor job of retaining our workforce here, quite frankly, and even people that have came here for the workforce. I want to touch on a few things, but I just want to give you an example. I had a good friend of mine that was an emergency room physician at Advent. And, I mean, you talk about, that's probably one of the better jobs you're going to find in Palm Coast, right, is like a physician. It's a retention issue. He got up and moved to Colorado simply because of the fact that he didn't think that there was enough to do around here, and also the situation that the area was changing, and he enjoyed being out, and he enjoyed the not, I shouldn't say quiet aspects, but he enjoyed the natural aspects, and it was changing for him, and he was finding himself stressed, and he went out to the mountains where it was a little bit more peaceful, in his exact words, and went. Now, to go back to your other issue, not everyone's going to be a physician, right? Not everyone's even going to go to college. In fact, I've talked about this a little bit recently. I attended college in Palm Coast, firefighter, paramedic, wildland, actually, I should specify. I don't have my structure. I have my wildland firefighter, which there's a lot more wildland firefighter here than structure.
Wildlife firefighter?
Wildland. So basically like Division of Forestry, except I didn't work for Division of Forestry. I just have the certifications for it. So like when they do the controlled burns at Princess Place and all that kind of stuff.
I'm thinking like the guys that, I don't know if this
dudes with the bandanas and the yellow hats.
Out of the planes into the.
No, those are okay. Those are the hot shots. Those are the hot shots. That's a whole. That is that, but that's cool. But I did not do that. yeah. That's next level. Those guys are the definition of badass. So yeah, not everyone is going to be a physician. Not everyone is going to be an attorney. Not everyone is going to be X, Y, or Z at that next level. And once again, this is like a lot of local issues here are actually national issues.
Okay.
Our school systems, in my opinion, and this isn't a jab at Flagler County, this isn't a jab at anyone, we've done a really good job at preparing students to go to college. We have done a really poor job preparing students who are not going to go to college. The disassociation or the disassembly of the vocational programs in schools, the mechanics, the plumbings, all the trades that had high school students in programs so that when they came out, they were workforce ready. We've effectively done away with all of those. And there's not that opportunity. And to double down on that, Palm Coast has put off an awful perception, in my opinion, of being younger business friendly. And I'm not talking about places like this that are storefronts. I'm talking about some of the issues, and a lot of people have made stances on this. I have been unapologetic and unwavering. If you don't like it, I'm sorry, but I think we need to do something with this. The truck ordinances and driveways.
Oh yeah.
The intention behind the truck ordinances and driveways was to not have fleets of vehicles and to have a certain look. We need workers. Hell, we need people who are going to show up and do jobs that other people that are 60 years old are not going to do. It's hard. It's a hard fact, right? And then on top of that too, I also am a staunch believer that this is America and people have personal property rights. So if you buy a house, I think you should be able to keep your truck there. And I think that there is things that we can do to address our codes to make Palm Coast a more friendly and fulfilling environment for business owners instead of shunning them.
Yeah,
I really do.
I can see that. I see that in my own neighborhood. So I live in Ormond. It's an HOA community. Yeah, you can't have that branded vehicle in your driveway.
I get the intent, right? And this is part of the problem is Palm Coast is, while not an HOA, is effectively an HOA by its charter.
Say that.
And people, and this, once again, this isn't a jab at real estate agents either, but, and I've spoken to many people, but not everyone who moved here is properly informed as to what they're buying into. So they don't understand the full amount of regulations and the whole extent of code enforcement.
Yeah.
Besides the fact that one of my top priorities would be revamping our code system. We have to do a better job of keeping people here who want to work. And in part of doing that, I understand the intent that they don't want, and it's not just work trucks, it's boats, it's everything. They don't want sailboats in your yard that are broken down and dilapidated. They don't want 15 work trucks with your thing on there, so you're basically running a business out of that. I agree. I don't think anyone wants that. I think it's unreasonable, though, if a person has a singular work vehicle. I don't care if it's wrapped. I don't care whatever. I mean, those wraps are nice and not cheap, by the way.
Yeah.
I think it really builds a communal aspect of like the guy who lives down the street is the plumber. Like when you need to call him, you need to call him, and he has a house. He paid for this. He pays his property taxes.
Yeah.
I think that there are simple things that we could do to address a lot of the perception that Palm Coast isn't business friendly.
Yeah, I can see that. Because even in my neighborhood, people that have these wrapped vehicles and they have these signs on their vehicles, they own the business.
Yeah.
Like
you're business owners,
right? Or even if you're a worker, it's not like you're a hooligan.
Yes.
You
don't have a spray painted vehicle with a bunch of derogatory terms on the side. Yeah, it's a business.
Yeah, you're contributing to the
sales
city.
Tax. You're contributing to the workforce. You're contributing to just the positive outward image of the place. Like it's not. It's been viewed in a negative because of how Palm Coast was historically established. But look, and I know there's a lot of talk about like, was incorporation for the city good or bad? We're past that. The city was incorporated. We are a city. We have needs as a city that we have to meet, and they're not being addressed. And what really irks me is there's been two previous council members, mayor, a few different people who have made the stance like, I agree with private property rights, and then didn't do a darn thing about it. So I am taking the stance that I will do something about it to the best of my ability. I remind people, only one vote on a board of 5. We need some other. I can't just go in there and start swinging hammers around. But I will make it a priority of mine to make Palm Coast a better place to live because I have a lot of friends that are my age that moved to DeLand, that moved to these other places. And while I don't think Palm Coast should even go in the direction of DeLand or Daytona, these people are coming in and they're coming from the outside from these businesses. Why not retain these people locally and have people that are vested in the community here? I don't think it's...
I can see that. Then you would increase the tax money and all that.
Increase tax money, increase the base. Instead of people operating a business out of St. Augustine, coming in to do work here and paying taxes back to a difference.
That's true.
Or just the allocation of the taxes.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And that's
Thanks.
not. Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, I mean, it's nothing like, it's not rocket science, but it's also just a simple perspective of like, we need workers. Why are we not encouraging workers?
Yeah, that's true.
And across the board.
Yeah, because this area is mostly older people, but you need to have those people here.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, that are the business owners that are going to be paying those taxes into the system. And
Yeah.
quite frankly, with the lack of vehicles that can be here, it does make it difficult. Now, yeah, there are garages and stuff like that, but not everyone has access to it.
Well, and let's talk about this too. One of the biggest issues, and these ideas of mine are complex in a sense that like I don't want people to think that I'm like stuck on one thing. But just take a look example for the boats. I don't even want to talk about the trucks. Just look at boats for an example.
Mm-hmm.
In my personal opinion, as an outdoorsman, first off, people usually that buy boats around here are not buying cheap boats, so they're nice, right? They're not exactly eyesores. Second, we live in a coastal community, so for me to not have a certain size boat, and we can pick a number, right? And I've thought about it, and picking a number is arbitrary. So if you say you can only have a boat up to 19 feet, people are going to say, well, what about 21? And what about 27? I think you could look at it from a total approach of like, what is the person's driveway? Like on an individual basis, like, is the person parking their other 3 cars in the grass? Are they parking on the neighbor's property? Like, is it affecting it? And if it's not, I don't see a reason why. So now if you allow people to do that, not only would the person who can now park their boat be happy to pay the $10 fee that I would implement, or once again, pick a number, 15, 20 bucks fee a year from the city, that would be a city generating fund effectively. It would help fund code enforcement. And more importantly, it would alleviate everyone's concern of more storage units, because these storage units that are popping up aren't just storage units in the sense of A-seed squares where you can put boxes because your house is full. Look at the back half of that storage property. It's trailers, it's RVs, and I'm a little iffy on allowing RVs just because of size and situations like that. But I mean, my neighbor has a 14-foot fiberglass boat that cost him $30,000, and he's paying $108 a month to rent out a storage unit. Adds up. And why not allow the city to take some of in that? And once again, you start going down the road of like, well, are you interfering with private business? Are you interfering with the market? I say, yeah, you may be interfering with it a little bit, but people also have property rights, and within reason, I think we should allow them to keep things at their house.
That's awesome. Love that. That's a really good explanation.
That was one of my buddy who was a doctor. He had a boat. Wouldn't let him keep it. He's like, all right.
And so he moved to Colorado. I've been to Colorado.
By the way, took a pay cut.
He did. Just because he wanted a change of lifestyle. Mm-hmm. That's cool, though.
Yeah. No. And it's, trust me, we haven't talked about it a lot, but when I was working on my mom's house over the past 3 years, and like in between me working, I took a few different road trips and traveled the country for 3 months, 4 months, 3 months, and then 2 months.
Oh, that's cool.
So I did almost a year of traveling. Yeah. And I went everywhere. I mean, I started low, took I-10 across, went up into Montana. I've been to 46 out of 50 states, and then Puerto Rico. Wow. And I've been to like 400 like cities, towns, whatever you want to say, like somewhere around that, seen all this. So I've seen what works in other areas. And I understand the appeal of these places where like you say what you want, but it's a little bit more free. And that's attractive to younger people.
Yeah, I can see that. You've been to Colorado, obviously.
Oh, yeah. I hunted in Colorado. Elk season. Yeah. Elk hunting. Cool. Yeah, a few times.
I've been there once. And so I'm from St. Louis originally.
I love Missouri, by the way. Yeah. Parts of it. Parts of it. I was, what the hell was it? Land Between the Lakes? Isn't that over there?
Well, most of Missouri is rural.
Yeah.
But
there's pockets.
Yeah, my exposure is St. Louis, and crime rate is a whole nother.
Could you just, no, actually, it's kind of not, though, because speaking of population growth, could you, to me, and having traveled, I'll be pretty blunt. I mean, I slept in a Memphis parking lot in Walmart one night, and like it was not the best area, right? Yeah. I have seen crime at a level that clearly outweighs what Palm Coast has as crime. Sure. How do you view crime in the area compared to St. Louis? Being a cop, I'm just curious as what you see as the trends and where you see it going, because there's a lot of discussion right now as to whether Palm Coast should have their own police force, as to whether the sheriff should be allotted the 36 deputies or the 36 deputies over the next 3 years. There's a lot of conversation as into the safety of the area. And having seen what I've seen elsewhere, we don't have crime in the way that other areas do. With that being said, though, I do see the slippery slope of how to get crime into an area quickly.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's just a given. Anytime you're increasing in population, you're going to have an increase in crime because more people here, more
problems,
opportunities, and also more criminals.
Yes.
It's just is what it is. But compared to St. Louis, from coast, Norman, it's a walk in the park.
Yeah. Well, you hear it a lot, and people say like, "This place is turning into New York," and I'm like, not quite. But I get the concern though, right? And that even dovetails into another point. One of my simple policies is just street lights in the area. Yeah. As we bring in more people, we need better lighting. We need more. We need all sorts of things. I don't even just talk about major thoroughfares. I think we could do a better job of lighting up some of the parts of the town. And that directly relates to crime because smash and grabs and vehicle burglaries are one of the highest activity crimes around here, besides for like domestic violence and stuff like that. But as far as like theft, it's people popping open doors at 3 a.m.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's dark.
Dude, I can relate to that because so I lived in the B section we were renting for like a year and a half.
That's where my girlfriend lives, is in the B section. Yeah. And I've lived there when we rented initially.
We lived on Parkwood. There were no lights. And so, like, Halloween, there were no kids to come over. It was just like, man, this is eerie because there's, like, no lights.
And look past the crime issue, right? It's even becoming a safety issue because now with the influx of people, you have people out walking dogs at 9 o'clock at night. We don't have sidewalks in most of the streets. Like, this is what I mean by we're behind the ball on a lot of things. You can't expect a massive influx of people and then everything to be dandy when the initial stuff wasn't in place for it.
I think also, like, when I was walking my dog, either in the night or early in the morning, talking about the animal wildlife again, you would see deer in the neighborhood. And to not have the lights so that the driver has proper enough warning, it does make it a safety.
I watched. It wasn't a deer, but it was a raccoon. I mean, I watched a raccoon one time run out in the road, and a lady swerved, and it was dark. And she didn't see that there was like, they weren't kids. I mean, they were kids. They were like 13. I mean, they weren't like babies, but they were like smaller, like younger children in a driveway. And she swerved and she almost hit the mailbox. And she was only a few feet away from the kids. And that's like common interactions. And take that to the extent of like, we're displacing these bigger pigs. Like people have like, don't want to do damage to their cars. Like there's all sorts of issues that you incur when you displace this wildlife by cutting down all the trees and then building stick homes on top of it.
So I want to kind of pivot.
Sure.
Tell me some of the other things you're passionate about when it comes to like politics. Tell me like what are some of the other things. I have some questions too. That
I would love.
I'll get to those in a second. Sure. We just been having a pretty organic conversation.
No, and I love this format, by the way. This is great. Like I love the long open conversations because you can explain your ideas. So
and you can put stuff in that relates, and it's fantastic.
It's hard to get what you want in a Facebook post in a couple hundred words.
And really what I like to do is I like people's personality to really just come out. And I probably won't even edit this because they'll be like, oh, you edited to make it look better. And it'll actually save me time if I don't edit it.
For me, don't edit it. Because one of my big things that I'm passionate about is actually transparency. I think the council, not just the current council, previous administrations has done a less than ideal job of being transparent with the residents. And that is one of the things that I am passionate about. We got a bird in here?
I think it's somebody's fault.
Like the wildlife listening to us. There's a huge perception issue with the city. And that is one of my driving factors is like, if not for nothing, let's restore trust in our local government because I don't trust our local government. I don't think that's a crazy stance. If you had asked me before I started this endeavor about some of like the conspiracy theories and stuff you hear, I'd be like, hey, like that's a little bit outlandish. But when you get involved in this, a lot of this stuff not only isn't true, but it's worse than you thought. And there's a lot of politics at play here locally where people have set themselves up to benefit others that support them. And it's not in the interest of residents. And that's my big thing is bringing back resident representation to the town. We have to give the people a voice. I want to stay here. I don't want to have to move. But a lot of people feel that way. They moved to Palm Coast for a reason. It's a beautiful area. And it's changing and not in the direction that it should be. We can do a significantly better job, I think. So I hope that kind of answered. I mean.
No, I did. It definitely did.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the other things that you're passionate about as it relates to politics and even life in general?
Yeah.
Kind of tell me that. I'm trying to get my computer back on.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, just from like personal hobbies and stuff, like one of the big spurs for me traveling the country was mountain biking. That was actually how I saw a lot of what when people travel the country. From my experience, and they do like the whole van life. It's cool because you go to the national parks and you see all this beautiful stuff. But having taken a bike with me, it allowed me to explore. I mean, I was doing like 20, 30 miles a day on some of these trails, and I was going to Colorado in the mountains, and you're seeing all the wildlife, and you see not for nothing, bro. It was, but it was. But yeah, man, traveling is a pretty big passion of mine. I really enjoy it. I haven't done it as much in the past year as I would like to because I've been working on my mother's house project and stuff like that. But and yeah, work has really become a big one. I've truly found the passion in doing like physical labor and handyman stuff, and I've been working on my mom's house and renovating that. And yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that I'm interested in. I have a huge passion for history. I do a lot of stuff with the Historical Society.
Cool.
We're actually not to go off on a tangent.
There are no tangents here.
Flagler County was, just so everyone kind of understands the history, St. John's and Volusia were touching at one point. And Flagler County was formed out of the middle of those two counties. Without pointing blame, St. John's and Volusia basically said, hey, there's some swamp land we can't do anything with. Let's axe it off and give it away. So a lot of the industry that spurred the growth of this area, and people don't realize this, was like physical manual labor from turpentine camps and from like wood mills and different ag. So like a lot of agriculture. And clearly we don't have a lot of agriculture anymore. We don't have a lot of cow farms and pastures because like the big beef industry has kind of put the little guys out of business. And so things have changed. But one of the big things was the turpentine farms, and they would go in and they would cat face these trees. And it's touchy subjects and people don't always like to talk about it, but it was Flagler was one of the last areas to desegregate in this area in the slavery times. And while slavery wasn't in effect, the turpentine farms were predominantly African American or poor white people, and you weren't a slave, but you owed your life to the store because they would pay you in food tokens that you could only spend at the store. And it was never enough to cover what you needed. So you were constantly out of work for these people. I'm currently working with the Historical Society right now. We've identified one of the largest remaining turpentine operations that was in Flagler County, and we've identified over 146 remaining trees that are kind of deteriorating right now, all with the turpentine faces, with the cat. We found the Hurdy pots. We're trying to build a whole image and tell the story, the good and the bad, because it is the history. And while it's uncomfortable to talk about, it's what happened. And you have to learn from your mistakes. And ignoring history is not. That's how you make the same mistakes. So by going through this, I'm really trying to work with the Historical Society to show the origins of how this area was developed, and not for nothing, but the cultural significance that African Americans had in this area, as well as the labor that people put in and just how this area developed. So we're trying to do a GIS mapping project, and we're going to do like an overlay, and we actually recovered from a landowner, took a chainsaw and cut out one of the cat faces and donated it to the Historical Society. So if people go up to the Holden Museum, it'll be in there. They did a whole preservation and everything, and we're trying to I'll show you some pictures later about some of the stuff. But yeah, so history and locally is crazy to me. I was never a history buff. Like whenever they talked about World War II, I was like, yeah, okay, like I get it. Like, but it didn't pique my interest. Like local history here has really taken a grasp on me because people think of Palm Coast as being a city that incorporated in '99, but there was hundreds of years prior to this that built this, and to ignore the foundation of how Palm Coast came is, I think, a critical mistake in the process.
That's super interesting.
In fact, the Historical Society has identified the first railroad potentially in the United States right here in Flagler County.
That's cool. I think that's interesting because as I've gotten older, I have such an appreciation for old stuff.
Yeah, like, me too. Cool. Because I look at myself now and I'm like, yeah, I'm only 30, but I'm like, man, I'm kind of old now. like you triple that. I'm like, that's pretty far back there. It's amazing that some of this stuff is still here. So,
absolutely, like the old cars, records, and stuff like that. I started to dig that as I get older.
Yeah, the vinyl's making a comeback. Albums are expensive.
Yeah, but with the vinyl, the music purists would say that's a different sound. too. Is that right?
I'm not
like
that
a
deep
higher
into. I'm not
quality
that deep into. All I know is that the vinyl records at Walmart cost like $79, some of them, and I'm like, wow, yeah. So
I like the look of them.
it's a niche thing for like younger people that think they're,
It's cool. Retro.
retro. Yeah, exactly.
But that's cool though that young people could get back into that.
Yeah.
Actually, I did an interview not too long ago at Cut Up and Sew, Joshua McClain, and that is an industry that young people need to get back into because they're losing it because they only know screens and stuff, and not many people know how to sell.
And when I speak of industry here, and I know like mom and pop stores and retail is kind of like blanket terms, but that right there is a prime example of like if someone younger came in and opened up a record store, like that's the kind of culture we want to build here is local owned businesses with kind of like a purpose in the community.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool.
I have some questions here.
Yeah. Let's run through.
Dan. Dan was the one that actually set this up to make this happen.
Yeah, thanks. Big shout out to Dan. Thanks for the opportunity.
Never met Dan.
No, I haven't met Dan yet. Yeah, like, I didn't even know who I was texting before. I was so confused. I'm like, oh, sorry, Dan.
And this is actually our first time meeting.
Yeah.
Well. So he had 3 questions that he wanted me to ask because apparently these are
hot topic issues.
I guess. I don't know. Like I said, I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't live in Palm Coast, and I think that puts me in a great position to be unbiased.
Yeah.
And just let people talk.
Yeah. And I appreciate I appreciate that because you rarely have that opportunity. Someone always has a side in investment being here.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. No, I agree. So the first one, I guess this is a hot topic. Will you be pushing for a full forensic audit of the city?
Okay, so let me give you a little bit of backstory. Let me start off with the short answer. Yes, I will be pushing for a full forensic audit of the city, but we need a little bit of history because there's so many layers to this and so much misconception as to what it does. I'm going to start off by saying I am not a forensic auditor. I am not an expert in the field. I have done a ton of research, though, as to what forensic audits cover. Now, we have a few issues. One, as we talked about before, there's a lack of transparency and trust within the city. That's not just this administration, as much as it pains me to say because I really disagree with the mayor right now on a lot of things, and the council and majority, short of Teresa Pontieri. It's hard to approach how to start talking about this because we have a need for a forensic audit. What it is going to entail and cover is the concerning part to me. A forensic audit implies that there is criminal activity taking place. Now, and I understand you're a little bit unfamiliar with this, and I'm sure some other people are too, so let me just give a little bit brief explanation. The talk around town isn't so much, in my opinion, is do we need the forensic audit? Most people seem to be in agreement that we need the forensic audit. The real question is, how far do we go back and how much are we willing to spend?
Yeah.
And what is the outcome? So a forensic audit implies that there is something criminal to take place. There hasn't been any direct accusations. And quite frankly, I think if we do a forensic audit, I hesitate saying this because there's no definitives, right? Pick any store. Pick Walmart, pick Home Depot, pick any big box store. Over the past 10 years, can you tell me that an employee from that place has never stolen?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, exactly, right? It would be ignorant to say that no one has done anything, right?
That's where they lose most of their revenue.
Okay.
A lot of times with these businesses, and they go under because people steal so much.
So I don't have, but I follow that up with, I don't have the personal belief, and I'm not saying it's not possible, but I don't have the personal belief that when we do this forensic audit, we are going to find what we're looking for. I don't think you're going to see someone with their hand in the cookie jar who's putting the money back into their pocket. Furthermore, a lot of the actions that have been taken by the council, and this is an accusation, I'm just saying what people are saying around town, is you're not going to find kickbacks on paperwork associated with the city. So you're not going to find what you're looking for. Now, with that being said, I think the forensic audit is mandatory. I think the cost has been a big issue, right? Some people are like, what if it costs $250? What if it costs $1 million? I got to be honest. Palm Coast has spent so much money in so many other stupid places that at this point, what's $1 million if it costs $1 million? But under the precursor that we are doing this to restore faith in our local government with the community, and under that simply that this is transparent. If it shows nothing, then what we have and what I fear and what I think the reality is wasn't theft. There may have been collusion. There may have been things that have taken place in the city. But when it comes to the actual funds of the city, I don't think you're going to find criminal activity. I think it's going to be incompetence and poor fiscal decisions and irresponsible spending, which, while not good, is not criminal.
Okay.
So I just want to preface the outcome with this. Now, the question was, how far back do we go? Do you only do a forensic audit for this council? Do you do one for Melissa Holland's last term? Do you do one for the term before that? I have a very simple proposal for this. We defer to the state. If someone did steal $100,000, how far back are we able to prosecute? If someone stole what is the statute of limitations effectively? If someone stole $100,000 15 years ago, but we can't prosecute that, like, it's cool to know, but like, what is the point exactly, to my extent? No, I do think it's good to be as transparent as possible, but if there's a major money difference and we can't go after these people, it's kind of a toss-up to me in the sense of, like, is it worth it to go that far back?
Right.
With that being said, an outside firm, I would absolutely try to implement some sort of policy where we have an accounting firm, by the way, and this is a lot of what gets talked about, is we have this great accounting firm, and I'm sure they do fantastic work. I've never questioned it. They get awards for all of their accounting and stuff like that, but we've had the same firm for 17 years. There's an incentive behind most business structures. As a business owner yourself, there's an incentive behind most business structures to keep your customers and to do a good job for your customers. And sometimes, and I'm not saying that they did this, but sometimes people overlook things or turn a blind eye in order to keep their customer base.
Yeah.
I have no problem. If there's issues with our accounting firm, we can handle that in the future. If there's not, I have no problem. And I think it's beneficial that you put in every 3 years, every 5 years, at the end of every term, every 2 years, so that there's when the councils get switched, or you figure out basically what structure you want to set it up. I'm not committing the hard numbers because this is all discussion that truly isn't just up to me. It should be at the city level, at the dais level, so that we can have open conversations, because this isn't just my input. But do an outside firm every X amount of years so that you're double checking your current accounting firm. That's all. The forensic audit, I hope it doesn't show foul play. I'm not convinced that it won't show foul play. My concern is that it's not going to show incompetence at a city staffing level where you make reckless spending decisions, because it's not illegal to spend $1.2 million of impact fees at Waterfront Park that no one uses. It's not illegal. It's stupid. Stupid isn't criminal. so you run it right. Like, how many people as a cop did you encounter that were idiots, but you couldn't arrest them just because they were an idiot?
Yeah.
Well, maybe.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. But you get what I'm getting at, though, right? Like spending money in an irresponsible manner is not. It's not warranted as someone taking $100,000 and shoving it into their pocket.
Yeah.
But I'm not willing to rule. I'm not standing on that there isn't anything fishy. I mean, and once again, it's a mix of rumors, but there's been articles about it. Like, Melissa Holland ended her tenure with an FBI investigation, with a resignation from the city attorney, or the city manager. Then they brought in the whole new staff, and there's obviously been pro-development here. So the question becomes, like, where do the council's priorities lies, and what do these people represent? And that is where we have lost trust in our government.
Now,
that's why we need a forensic audit.
Now, has there ever been a forensic audit before?
No, but there has been one in, I'm forgetting the place in the Panhandle, the big one. Oh, what the hell is that place called? There was a forensic audit done in the Panhandle, and they found the lady stealing $100K. But the difference is, and this is where it gets a little bit tricky too, is that there's no outward allegations. There's no clear, like, we think this person stole this.
Yeah.
Just blind search. So then the question gets brought up, and you've heard the ideas of, like, well, should we just check certain accounts? Should we just do this? No. You either do it all at once and you do it right, or you don't do it at all. And I don't think doing it all is the thing. I will say this: if we fork over this money, I sincerely hope to the residents that, first off, I'm not a politician. I'm doing this because I care about the community, right? I have no dog in this fight in sense of, like, backers or, like, special interest groups or anything like that. Mm-hmm. I am trying to set a standard of transparency and reconnect that community with their leadership. Regardless of the outcome, I just hope that the residents of Palm Coast understand that we are trying our best to be transparent going forward in the future. And even if there's nothing, we can't sit there. Like, we just have to move forward as a point of some city. And that's the fault of prior administrations who have pushed this off, who have gotten involved in crazy stuff and have caused all these news articles. And, like, the council doesn't do themselves any favors. So by doing this, we have to set a tone that we are going to be transparent and open from day one. Mm-hmm. And going forward, we'll deal with whatever took place in the past, but going forward, we have to focus on the future. We can't continuously harp on this issue. It has to be done, put to rest, and move forward. And we'll find out, right? The results will speak for themselves. I hope there's nothing, but if there is, hold those people accountable and to the full extent.
Yeah.
Or make adjustments within the city. Someone's doing something, see their way out.
So that's interesting you say that because I started law enforcement in 2010.
Sure.
That was before body cameras and all that. What a forensic audit would do is set the tone.
Exactly.
That, hey, someone can go back at some point and see what you did. So it would bring up the level of accountability,
exactly.
the level of professionalism,
yes.
maybe. So, there's, arguments on both sides for the body cameras. But in general, it kind of weed out some of those cops that weren't.
I tell you what, if I was a police officer, which I wasn't, but I was on the ambulance, so I saw a lot of what goes on with the police. As a police officer, in my personal opinion, I would want that body cam. Not because of, not in the fear of that I'm doing something, but you don't know what other people accuse you of. And that is the transparency that we need to bring forward to the city. Because we hold cops to a very high standard in this country. Sometimes a little bit too high of a standard, if you will, right? And I don't mean that there's obviously issues in every job, everything, and there's bad people and all sorts of things. But that level of transparency, and I think you can attest to this, has toned down a lot of the rhetoric towards police officers. And as you said, has weeded out the bad ones. And if you weed out the people, there are great employees at the city. There are great upper-level staffers at the city. There's great council members at the city. Teresa's fantastic. And obviously can't get rid of her, because she's voted in. But you bring a next level that has not been here before. So when you guys were out on the street and you guys were accused of beating up a suspect or something unjustly, right, and you didn't have cameras, you couldn't turn around and say, no, that wasn't what took place. It was your word against theirs. Granted, you're a cop, so your word probably goes a little bit further than the guy who's accusing you. But in this situation, the residents' word would go further because they're the taxpayers, and that's who we are employed to, or not even employed, elected to represent. And as stewards of our tax dollars in our community, there is zero excuses to me as to why the city council cannot be as open and transparent as possible on all issues across the board. Thanks.
Two more.
Run it.
How will you fix the disconnect between the constituents and the council members? You already kind of talked about that.
Kind of touched on that, but I'll dive a little bit further because Mayor Alphen ran. If you listen to, and I hate saying this because I don't want to paint me in a bad light per se, but if you listen to what Alphen was saying, Mayor Alphen was saying when he ran on his election, it's not far off from what I was saying. He was saying we need to balance conservation. He was saying all these things about how he's going to run the city in a way that represents the residents. And people can go back and look this up. I believe it was the Palm Coast Observer interview. He specifically stated that he felt that the job of the mayor should not be done behind the desk. Instead, it should be done hand in hand with the residents at an eye-to-eye level so that everyone is on board. He hasn't done that. Not only has he not done that, he has steered the council into doing the opposite. They don't return emails, they don't return phone calls, they don't show up to the community meetings. There's all this stuff. I promise you right now, and you aren't a resident of Palm Coast, but I'm making a statement to you. I promise you right now that I will not work behind the desk, and I will be on the ground level with the residents. And that's how you build it back, is you talk to the people, you listen to them. We have so many amazing residents in Palm Coast that are retired but highly educated. Everything from, I mean, let's be real. It's not cheap to live here. You're not getting people that were poor to live here, right? Like, in fact, that's the big issue with the affordable housing is we can't get affordable housing. But you're not getting stupid people who had moved here. And a lot of these people, quite frankly, are retired.
Yeah.
A lot of them are bored. And we could be utilizing the community to solve a lot of the issues that we need to use the community to solve them. And we aren't interacting at the level. We're doing things, and I say we, but the council is doing things that are in direct opposition of what the residents want. So it goes further than just being behind the desk and talking to the residents. It goes to changing council meetings, how you go about the council meetings. One of the things that happens is at public comment, everyone has 3 minutes at the beginning and the end to speak, and you can get up there and talk about anything that's not on the agenda. So if they're doing a rezone, there's a public comment before they speak on that item. You can't just mutter at the bottom. So residents will come up and they'll complain about Florida Park Drive, and they'll complain about traffic, and they'll complain about the new building, and they'll complain about the storage units. And the mayor says, thank you for your comment. And that's it. And then they have comments at the end, and most of the council sits there and says, like, no comment, thank you. They go off on a tangent about something they want. There's no discussion back with the residents. Now, I understand Robert's rule of law and the whole orders as to how the dais is supposed to be run, but there's nothing that says that you can't address the questions. And they Mayor Alford, in my opinion, not to bash on the guy, but has done a terrible job in regards to that. People get up, they don't understand the format, that it's not a question and answer session in that 3 minutes. You're supposed to get up and make your comments. And he'll respond by, hey, this isn't a Q&A. This isn't a discussion for us to be had. You make your statement, and then we go about our business. And prior administrations have done the opposite, so it's not like it's impossible. Take the time. After that person gets a comment, let them stand up there. They don't have to continue talking. They've used their 3 minutes to speak. They've got their point across, but address their comments individually so it doesn't seem like it's falling on deaf ears. Once again, a lot of the issues in Palm Coast, while simple, a lot of them are also complex. Do you know about Florida Park, for example?
No, tell me about it.
So Florida Park Drive it's part of the F section. So I'm over in the C section, and if you go down Palm Harbor, there's a Florida Park Drive. Now, Florida Park Drive is interesting because it's one of the few areas that connects Palm Harbor to over in the public spot. So, and there's houses. It's a 2-lane road. It was never designed as a major thoroughfare.
Yeah.
It's a 2-lane road. Short geographically, there's like canals on this side. You can't go on this side, so you can't expand this road unless you take away people's driveways. The sidewalk that's there, you like start encroaching, to which it's not alleviating traffic. There's things that can be done. We've spent studies. We've done all this sorts of stuff, tried to enhance it, but there's been no major action taken. And I'll concede, it's hard to say, but there's no simple solution to that because of geography, and like you can't just build an additional road. You can't find another cut through, right?
Yeah.
But when people go up to the council and voice their complaints, and then the response is thank you for your comment, and still nothing gets done, it's just not the look that we should be pushing forward. We should be talking to the residents. We should be asking them for their input on what they do, because a lot of residents bring input to the city council to express their things. They say a lot of people are once again smart. They show up for the problem and they provide a solution, or at least something to work off of the basis of, and we don't even embrace that. And we need to embrace that. So being hand in hand, not being behind the desk, working, having an open communication, all ways that you can bring back the cohesion of the residents. And quite frankly, I don't think I'm far off from saying this. It is at the lowest of the low with this mayor. There has never been a time that has been more divisive in Palm Coast and has been a greater disconnect. There's been issues in the past. People haven't been happy with other councils. There's even been more arguments within the councils. We have never had a time in which the residents and the city are at such odds with each other. And it's concerning.
Yeah, I can definitely see how addressing questions would definitely feel like the person's being heard.
And because the follow-up is that those people come back and they say, we've been here for a year saying the same stuff and you guys don't say anything and say anything. And it's just opening up a dialogue and explaining to them the challenges, the funding issues, whatever it is. There's a list of things that we can be doing to better the interaction between residents and rebuild the trust.
Interesting. And to give a little context, I haven't looked up any of the issues.
Sure.
And doing that, I feel like I'm even more objective. I'm just asking questions to be educated.
Sure.
So that might be different than a lot of interviews you do. Like I said, I don't have a dog in the fight, so I haven't researched any of these things. So it's coming to me for the first time, a lot of this stuff. So I have one last question for you.
Sure.
So how is your age a positive or negative factor to serve the city?
Yeah. So, yeah, no worries. So I get this a lot, right? I understand it. I get why people are hesitant, right? 30, sure. My age, I'll be blunt. The people that are double my age haven't done us any favors. The people in the suits haven't done us any favors. Why are we electing another person of that age without fresh ideas who is continuing to run the city into the ground? Name me someone on that council that's similar to my age. Teresa Pontieri, she's doing a good job. She's only 10 years older than me. She's one of the younger ones. The other council members are 55, 60. I mean, one of our council members can't hear, which is part of the issue, right? Like she's always messing with her hearing aid. So just having a different outlook and different perception. And I'll say this again bluntly too, and people can take it for what it's worth. And I also preface this with, I understand the position. When you are 75 years old, a lot of things won't affect you in 10 years. And people say that. Why do I care? I'm not going to be here in 10 years. That's where my age brings a positive to this campaign and to the city as a whole. Because hopefully I'm not dead in 10 years, right? Like I have to take care of the city for the future because I have 40, 50 years. My children are going to have 40, 50 years. This is very forward thinking things. And as a leader, it's uncomfortable to have a lot of these discussions, but as a leader, it is your responsibility to tell the truth and to have these discussions as comfortable as they are. Many people aren't going to agree with you for whatever, right? People make fun of me because I wear a camo hat and have long hair. Whatever. People aren't going to like you because they don't like you. That being said, putting an age restriction on there, I mean, our founding fathers were at the Declaration of Independence in their 30s. Like, I don't, this country was built off of younger individuals taking care of the older individuals who took care of their older individuals and so on and so forth. And we haven't transitioned and handed over that yet. And quite frankly, we are stagnant in the ideas. And it's very easy to fall into the trap of, I don't care because it's not going to affect me. Let's look at the saltwater canal issue. I don't know if you're familiar with this. This is an issue that Alan and the crew kind of put together. And the talk is that they were promising people that they were going to dredge the canals, and it was kind of sold as like a luxury boat situation and so on and so forth. Let's step back into the 70s. Palm Coast was developed late 60s, early 70s. They built a canal system here in the C section. It was designed as one of the most integral parts of our stormwater maintenance program. In fact, it drains everything from east of I-95. Punta Gorda on the west coast built the same exact canal system at the same exact time, except they were smart enough to charge the residents $1,100 per year. I think that's the number. It started off as like $400. It's gradually increased. It's somewhere around $1,100 a year right now. You buy into the seawall and the dredging program, and they have 50 years of back funds so that when seawall and dredging needs to be taken place, there was an established account. Palm Coast absolutely refused. Well, it wasn't Palm Coast, it was ITT at the time. But ITT at the time and the residents didn't want to implement that fee structure. Yeah. And that's why we're now looking for $20 million to dredge the canals. Because back then, people said, I won't be here in 15 years when the canals need dredged. What do I care? Like, it's a tough conversation to have, but we have to care because even don't look at it from my point of don't look at it from a selfish viewpoint of me because I'm 30 and in 70 years I'm going to incur these costs. Put it down to the next generation. When the 70-year-olds now turn 80 and the 60-year-olds turn 70, they're going to be in the same spot. So at some point, people have to, and I'm an advocate of not raising taxes until we sift through that budget and make sure that our money is being spent accordingly. But eventually, someone is going to have to pay for it to incur the cost of the future so that in the future, we're not setting people up for failure because that's effectively what has been done to the residents now. 40 years ago, no one cared. Now the residents are dealing with all these infrastructure issues, all these costs, all these appropriations from the state where people disagree with it because they're going west and building a road out there, but we have failing wastewater systems and failing water departments and our canals need dredged. So there's a list of things, and quite frankly, I think it's going to take someone a little bit younger and a little bit more long-term focus to steer this city back into a direction. And it may be uncomfortable at first, quite frankly, because there may be some there's going to be some drastic changes when I'm elected. And in doing so, we are going to set a new tone going forward so that the residents of the future are equally as taken care of as the residents that are here. Or else the city's going to die. What else are you going to do? Keep on banking up all this debt, keep on incurring all these costs. Right. Someone has to pay for this eventually. Yeah, and I'm all for maintaining our low taxes. I'm all for the homestead. I'm all for all these things. But we can't spend $1 million on random projects when we have core and necessary needs that have to be taken place first. I'm all for the luxury items. I'm all for that stuff. If we have the money and if we have the basic stuff taken care of, that's when you start expanding going forward with that. And to piggyback off of that, I have a little bit different perception as to where the money should be coming from. I think I hold the same belief that most of Palm Coast residents do. There's a buy-in to this community, right? Like when you build a house here, impact fees, while they can only be used for new expenditures. So you can't, if you have a sidewalk that's broken, you can't replace one square. Like you can't use money for repairs. You have to use money for new, which is fine. But we could be adjusting our impact fees, and they have recently, but they still didn't do it to the levels that I would have been happy with. to where we are making sure that if you move into this city, you are paying your fair share as to what you are bringing in. And quite frankly, I make the argument because the developers will sit there and say, "Oh, the cost gets passed on to the homeowner, and the homeowner has to incur that cost, and we're trying to keep housing affordable." At $580 or $600,000, I don't think the 20K is going to be the make or break for people coming into this community.
Yeah.
Like, make sure that we are taken care of, and not only that, but as a person moving into the community, I would want a peace of mind that we are doing things so that when I'm buying a house, investing in an area, I'm not going to be screwed in 20 years. It's not an illogical idea.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense.
yeah,
Definitely.
but
Yeah.
lots of things have come up about my age, and I understand the concerns, but at the same time, we need new, fresh leadership in this city that is willing to make some steps in the direction that benefits the residents, and we haven't had that.
Yeah. Me personally, I think capability is more important.
I agree. I agree. I've met a lot of really smart people that have a lot of really impressive degrees, but don't have just simple common sense. And I think that that's what we're restoring. We need to restore back to the community is a common sense, basic approach. That's it. We don't need extravagant things to make our city beautiful because our city already is beautiful the way that it is. We just want to enhance it and make sure that we're doing it in a responsible way. So,
That's cool.
yeah.
I love this opportunity really that we had. Like, there's no format. If anybody else wants to come on here, feel free. We can make that happen. Like I said, I don't live here, so therefore I don't have a dog in the fight. You're not a dog, obviously. but you can use my platform if you want to come on, and there's no I got you moments because that's not my intent. My intent really for my audience is so they can see kind of another side of you. Maybe they don't get to see, and that's why we spend so much time talking about the hunting and stuff. Quite frankly, I want to go hunt.
Dude, I'll take you
And
out
then
there.
he started talking about food, and then, and so, but yeah, I would be open to anybody using the platform as that. The same questions will be had at the end or whatever. You can answer them just the same. He had the questions yesterday. I didn't know he actually didn't want the questions.
Yeah, I didn't. I briefly looked at them and I closed it, and I was like, I don't do well with like canned answers, and that's why I really appreciate this format because all we're having is a conversation. Like I barely looked at the camera while we've had this conversation, so I appreciate that because a lot of this isn't just here's my prepared speech or go look at my website for my stance. These are things that we need to talk about and discuss as a community, and we need to get all of the community's input on a lot of these issues. And quite frankly, a lot of the majority of the members I've spoke to thousands of residents at this point. I mean, I had to get 700 signatures just to get on the ballot in order to even have my name on there. So I spoke, and with a rejection rate of 20% because I was getting signatures from out of districts and stuff like that. I've spoken to a minimum of 1,000 people, a minimum, and that's way far off. I can count on my hands people that have disagreed with a lot of my stances. We are a lot more united than we think as a community, and a lot of people share the same values. I've been super blunt about this. Big party politics, while I shouldn't say detrimental, while a mechanism that affects our local government should quite frankly be put to the side a little bit, and we should focus on the local issues here that affect our neighbors, that affect the people that we see every day. You talk to, and that's been the beauty of this campaign and eye-opening to me. I have my own political beliefs that I keep to myself, and other people have theirs. But through meeting all these residents and through working on different issues, I mean, we had Democrats, Republicans, Independents, all sitting down at tables working cohesively. I mean, there was literally one person with a Let's Go Brandon shirt and another person with a picture of Obama. And they were working together to stop the overdevelopment of their area because they agreed on that issue. And it's a bigger thing nationally. We are so far apart when we should be coming together because we need to more than ever now.
That's beautiful. I love that. I love that. And that's one of the reasons I have not talked about politics on my channel because I don't want to isolate it.
Yeah.
And just being able to work hand in hand without them like, oh, he's this or he's that.
Yeah.
People probably have an idea where I stand on certain things, but at the same
and they
time,
probably have an idea where I stand on certain things. But you know what? At the end of the day, me and you, I don't know your beliefs. You didn't tell me, and quite frankly, I don't care because we're able to have a civil discourse and sit down and have a conversation. And if we don't have more conversations with our neighbors and talk to each other, we're going to have a real issue in the future. And that's not just at a Palm Coast level. That's at a national level. That's at a state level. That's at all the levels. We have to come back to the sense of we're people who care about each other in a community that we care about. So let's put our best foot forward and come together as a cohesive unit and work towards a common goal and a vision.
Yeah, because that's just a human thing to do. Because I feel like at some point our society kind of lost that. People lost the ability to debate and disagree and still like each other.
We lost it. I could pinpoint to it, right? Like I'm old enough to remember when we didn't have social media and young enough to have embraced all of the social media at the same time. When we went from, you used to have to talk to someone on a phone and like physically pick up a phone or like go knock on their door and see them face to face. I'll be blunt. It's hard to have those conversations that you have online when I don't know who you are. I see a picture of you. Effectively, you're like not a real person to me.
Right.
You can throw out all these kinds of crazy comments when it's hard to say, hey, you know what, man, you're an ass, like to your face, right? Like it's hard to say that, but like even if we disagree, it's hard to say that to your face. So by opening those communications and breaking down those barriers and realizing that like at the end of the day, I truly believe that most Americans and most Palm Coast residents have the same goals and want the community to be better. And we have strayed so far from that on both sides, and both sides are guilty. And that's why I enjoy that this is a nonpartisan race where you honestly can't declare, because it shows that at the end of the day, we're not talking Democrat, Republican. We're talking local issues with local people who care about their community.
I love that.
Sweet.
Peter,
Thaddeus, thank you. Hey, thank you for the opportunity, and I sincerely appreciate it. And if you don't mind, I would encourage every other person in this race to come sit down with you, because you have been not only open, upfront, and transparent, but you really bring something that I think is needing to this community. And quite frankly, it doesn't really do me any good, but let everyone see the options, and I hope the others do come to you and sit down, because this was very important, and I hope it's done. Sweet.
Like I said,
Thanks, man.
completely open to anybody coming on. Like, it's just a way to be authentic. And I think social media is a place where people see so much fake. And so as much as you can, just get out there and be authentic.
And do your own research. At the end of the day, look at all the different sources and formulate your own opinion. Look, no one, I mean, I tell this to a lot of people, right? Especially ones that have been married for 40, 50 years. How often, do you have a significant other? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. You said your wife is in Flagler. My apologies. Yeah. How often do you guys get into arguments? Probably not a lot, but occasionally, right? So, like, you guys don't agree on everything. That's true. But you're married, or it's your partner, right? And you still live together. And that's kind of how I look at it as a community, right? Like, we're not all going to agree on the same things, but in the general sense, if we can come together and just work towards a common goal, I think we would be in a much better place than trying to separate and divide.
I love that.
Yeah.
And you're having me over soon for fish and squirrel.
No. I'm not having you over soon for fish and squirrel. I'm having you over soon so we can go get the fish and squirrel, and then we're going to do the whole process. You don't get to make me go hunting and then show up and eat. Yeah. That's not how this works, dude. You get the truck through the swamp with me. No. You get the truck through the swamp with me. You get to clean it with me. Dude, we're doing the whole thing, man. We're doing the whole thing. Sweet deal, man. Thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity, man. Thank you so much.
Huge thanks to Mike of Good Vibes Nutrition for allowing his space for meaningful conversations like this.